Welcome to 11 Recaps. If you enjoy this summary, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. It really helps me keep bringing you engaging content. Ready for your support? Awesome, thank you. Let's dive in. A college security guard named Jill, after covertly entering a laboratory to acquire some expired medications, sells the items to an individual named Greg. Although she is dissatisfied with the payment she receives, Jill proceeds to her mother-in-law's residence to collect her children, Matilda and Noah, who are no longer in her custody. As they prepare to leave, Noah appears disinterested, but Doris encourages him to go along. Doris instructs Jill to ensure the children are returned later that day before departing with them in her vehicle. During the drive, she inquires about their school experiences. Matilda responds enthusiastically, while Noah remains unresponsive. Unexpectedly, Jill loses control of the car but narrowly avoids a collision. Just as she checks on her children's well-being, a sheriff's vehicle collides with hers, resulting in a severe accident. The family ends up in a nearby lake, struggling to escape. Jill manages to free herself and Noah, only to find that the sheriff has already rescued Matilda. As they swim back to shore, Matilda regains consciousness, and the sheriff informs Jill that her daughter had fainted. He also mentions that there have been reports of a citywide power outage. The sheriff notes that numerous vehicles have lost power and advises Jill to go to the hospital to have her head injury treated. After leaving with her children, they arrive at the hospital, where they encounter many injured individuals. Jill attempts to seek help for Matilda, but since the young girl insists she is fine, no one attends to her. While Jill tries to tend to her own injury, she hears a woman calling for assistance. Following the voice, she enters a room where she discovers that two individuals who had been in a long-term coma have awakened, leaving her in a state of shock. Eventually, she takes her children back to Doris' home. When they arrive, Doris invites Jill to stay the night instead of heading back to her apartment. During dinner, Jill inquires if Doris has enough medication at home, to which Doris reassures her that she does. However, when Doris asks Jill if she has any cash for food, Jill admits that all her money is in the car. She mentions that she will try to grab something to eat on her way to work the next day. That night, Jill finds it hard to sleep and wanders into the living room, where she comes across photos of her children and one of her late husband, who served in the military. Shortly after, Doris joins her and expresses her own difficulty in sleeping. Doris asks Jill if she has any medication to help, but Jill explains that she has stopped using drugs. Instead, she suggests meditation, but Doris replies that it doesn't work for her. Later, Jill checks on her daughter Matilda, who is peacefully asleep. However, when she goes to see Noah, she finds him still awake. She asks him why he isn't sleeping, and he replies that he can't. Early the next morning, Jill leaves the house to start her shift. On her way, she encounters Greg, who urgently asks for more drugs. Jill tries to calm him down, but his desperation leads him to offer her double the usual price. With that, Jill heads to work, only to find the place empty. This doesn't deter her from going to the lab to collect some expired medication. While she's there, a military doctor named Murphy arrives at the college with a group of soldiers. Dr. Murphy, who works at the college, is there to retrieve some items from the lab, which serves as her office. As she enters, a soldier spots Jill in the lab and questions her presence. Jill explains that she is a former soldier now working as a security guard at the college. Just then, Murphy walks in and recognizes Jill. She appears disheartened upon realizing Jill's true intentions. Jill apologizes and clarifies to Murphy that her actions are not as they seem. It is revealed that Jill previously served in the military, but was discharged due to her struggles with drug addiction. Nevertheless, Murphy assisted her in securing a position at the college. Jill inquires about Murphy's current activities, to which the doctor explains that she is establishing a hub for research purposes. Murphy notes that since the power outage the day before, no one has been able to rest. Jill expresses surprise at this information, and Murphy invites her to join, emphasizing the need for assistance. Jill declines the offer. As Murphy prepares to depart, she provides a man named Brian with the address of the hub, instructing him to bring his family. As Murphy leaves, Brian advises Jill to have accompanied the doctor, warning that chaos will ensue if people continue to suffer from sleep deprivation. Jill argues that it is impossible for everyone to be awake, but Brian insists that this is indeed the case. He mentions a woman who has managed to sleep, explaining that Murphy's hub is focused on understanding what makes her unique. Jill remains skeptical, recalling that she witnessed Matilda sleeping. Regretting her words, Jill realizes that Brian may suggest examining Matilda if she can sleep. She quickly dismisses her earlier statement, but Brian asserts that anyone still unconscious must be dead. Alarmed, Jill rushes home to check on Matilda, only to find Noah, who informs her that Doris has taken his sister to the church. At the church, a pastor is delivering a sermon when a woman seated next to Doris informs him that Matilda is not sleeping. The pastor approaches Matilda, encouraging her to rest, as the congregation is in desperate need of a miracle. Matilda explains that she must first feel tired before she can sleep, prompting the pastor to suggest that they pray for her. Jill urgently tells Noah that they must get to the church right away. Just before they leave, Brian enters and inquires about Matilda's well-being. Jill reassures him that her daughter is okay, though she admits that Matilda had trouble sleeping. Noah interjects, revealing that he was the one who woke Matilda up, which makes Jill realize her daughter might be in danger. Brian suggests they take Matilda to see Murphy, but Jill is against this idea. Determined, she leaves with Noah to search for her daughter. Brian decides to follow them, and as they navigate through the city, they witness chaos as people begin to vandalize. They soon learn that the sheriff has been killed. When Noah asks about the situation, Jill explains that many are suffering from severe sleep deprivation. They quicken their pace and finally reach the church, where preparations are underway for a prayer for Matilda. Jill insists on leaving with her daughter, but the pastor argues that Matilda could be crucial in finding a solution to their crisis. As Jill persists, another woman claims that Matilda cannot be taken because she is under Doris' legal guardianship. Brian tries to calm the situation, suggesting a hub where Matilda could be taken for help. The pastor opposes this, fearing Matilda would be exploited as a test subject. In a tense moment, Brian threatens to report the church to the army, but he is shot by Deputy Sheriff Jim, who sides with the pastor. Panic ensues, and Jill instructs Noah to meet her in the forest while she goes to rescue Matilda. As she makes her way, Jim threatens the pastor, demanding Matilda's release. Amidst the commotion, Jill successfully finds her daughter and prepares to escape. Meanwhile, Noah is left in shock at Brian's lifeless body. Upon closer inspection, he discovers a note in Brian's pocket with the address of the hub. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out, prompting him to rush into the forest, where he reunites with Jill and Matilda. After distancing themselves from the church, Noah proposes that they take Matilda to the hub in search of a cure, but Jill is opposed to the idea. He argues that if everyone perishes, Matilda will be left alone in the world. Although Jill remains unconvinced, she ultimately agrees to the plan once they secure a vehicle. She heads to Greg's garage to see if he can provide her with a car. Unfortunately, she discovers a group of men attempting to steal a vehicle after having shot Greg, who is still alive. The intruders hear Jill moving about, but before they can pursue her, she manages to find a hiding spot. The men soon realize that Greg is still breathing, leading them to believe the noise originated from him. They then kill him and continue their search for a car to steal. One of the assailants is seen wearing a sheriff's badge, and after obtaining the keys to one of the vehicles, they depart. Eventually, Jill secures a car and returns to reunite with her children. During their journey to the hub, Matilda falls asleep again, leaving both Noah and Jill astonished. Shortly thereafter, they encounter the scene of an accident. As Jill investigates, she discovers that the men from Greg's garage have been killed in a gunfight. She takes the sheriff's badge and one of their firearms before returning to the car. Prior to leaving, she informs Noah that Murphy's soldiers likely caused the men's deaths. Jill then explains that Murphy is a military psychiatrist known for employing extreme methods, including sleep deprivation, to torture and eliminate individuals. Despite this revelation, Noah insists on proceeding to the hub. On their route, they pass a library, prompting Jill to suggest they acquire a book on mapping. She takes Matilda inside, and once there, Jill tells her daughter that in the event of widespread death, she must learn survival skills from the library's books. Jill attempts to teach Matilda how to use a gun, but the young girl struggles with it. Eventually, Matilda runs back to the car, and in a moment of frustration, Jill notices Noah also inside the library. While utilizing a map to locate the hub, it appears that several inmates have managed to escape from prison. Shortly thereafter, one of them, identified as Dodge, steals Jill's car, with Matilda asleep in the back seat. Jill and Noah rush outside in an attempt to stop him. but he successfully drives away, evading the other inmates. At that moment, Jill must defend Noah from the approaching inmates. In a desperate measure, she fires her gun to intimidate them, but discovers that it is the last bullet. The men become aware of this fact, yet before they can act, Dodge returns with the car and urges them to enter quickly. In a state of shock, Jill and Noah are reassured by Matilda, who encourages them to join. They get into the vehicle, and Jill attempts to use the gun to deter Dodge from any malicious intent. However, he ultimately disarms her and takes the car key after making a stop for gas. While Jill instructs Matilda on how to refuel the vehicle, Dodge finds some spare clothing and changes into it. As he approaches the car, he inquires of Noah why Jill appears so distressed. Noah explains that Jill is preparing Matilda to be self-sufficient in case they do not discover a cure. Upon hearing this, Dodge realizes he can accompany them. Just then, Jill questions his destination, and upon learning she is heading north, Dodge reveals that he is also going in that direction. They set off together, and after some time, Jill begins to teach Matilda how to drive. As Matilda expresses frustration over the difficulty, Jill advises her that some lessons must be learned from books. Dodge, however, dismisses the value of books, claiming they merely contain the thoughts of others and should be burned. Displeased with this perspective, Jill insists that Matilda needs to focus. As they continue their journey, they encounter a group of savages intent on attacking them. Jill swiftly takes control of the vehicle, and despite the men breaking a window and attempting to gain entry, she manages to drive away successfully. Shortly thereafter, they approach the hub, and after exiting the vehicle with her children, Jill instructs Dodge to proceed with his journey. He inquires whether they would like him to accompany them, but Jill insists he can depart, as she wishes to keep her intentions hidden from him. Once he leaves, Jill informs her children of her plan to first assess the safety of the hub before deciding to bring them along. Before departing, she advises Matilda that if she does not return, there is sufficient food in the nearby house for her to survive for a time. She also instructs Noah to wait for her, after which she ventures into the woods, attempting to evade the soldiers stationed at the hub. Ultimately, she gains entry to the hub and acquires a lab coat to impersonate a doctor. Jill then inquires about the location where the only woman capable of sleeping is being examined. Upon her arrival, a security guard questions her presence, to which she responds that she is there to collect blood samples. However, when she encounters the woman, Jill urges her to look after Matilda in the event of a catastrophe. She further asserts that her purpose is to rescue the woman. The woman, however, perceives Jill's statement as a jest, expressing her confusion over her ability to sleep, given that she was expected to have perished months prior. As Jill attempts to comprehend this situation, Murphy spots her. In a moment of quick thinking, Jill fabricates a story, claiming she came to assist after receiving the address from Brian. Murphy then inquires about Brian and her family, but Jill admits she has not heard from him in some time. Jill also questions Murphy regarding any progress, to which Murphy responds that it appears everyone is destined to perish. Murphy then welcomes Jill to the team and instructs her to prepare for the upcoming experiment. Following their conversation, Jill steps outside and begins to weep, realizing the potential loss of her children. At that moment, she notices Dodge approaching the hub with Matilda and Noah. The soldiers at the entrance halt their progress, and as they disembark, Matilda assures them that she can sleep. This leads her to a meeting with Murphy and another doctor named Katz. They inform Matilda that she has the ability to help others sleep, but first, they need to compare her brain activity with that of an animal. Once she is put to sleep, Murphy seeks out Jill to voice her frustration over Jill's decision to keep her daughter hidden. Jill insists that her only concern is her daughter's safety, but Murphy counters that Matilda's well-being is crucial for everyone's survival. She explains that the sleep deprivation they are experiencing is likely due to a solar flare disrupting their internal clocks. Soon after, Murphy resumes her tests on Matilda, who witnesses the death of another test subject before their vital signs are compared. The doctors attempt to revive the subject with a defibrillator, but their efforts fail. Murphy then proposes using Noah for comparison instead. Meanwhile, Jill begins to hallucinate, envisioning Noah attacking her for not being present for her children. She snaps back to reality when Murphy enters with soldiers to take Noah away. Desperate, she pleads for them to leave him alone, but her cries go unheard. In another part of the facility, one soldier starts to see things, leading him to believe they are under attack. In a frenzy, he begins a violent rampage, and several other soldiers follow suit, turning on themselves. One soldier even attempts to harm Jill, but she narrowly misses her shot before taking her own life. Shortly after, Jill frantically searches for Matilda. Upon reaching the lab, she overhears Katz telling Murphy that sacrificing Matilda for their own survival is illogical. Nevertheless, Murphy remains determined to proceed with the experiments, prompting Katz to take drastic action against her. Meanwhile, another soldier is on the verge of killing Noah when Dodge intervenes, clarifying that the soldier is merely hallucinating and that they are not under attack. The soldier ultimately takes Dodge's life, but Noah manages to crawl away to safety. Matilda and Jill begin their search for him. Eventually, Matilda spots him playing with a live wire, but before she can warn him, he gets electrocuted. In a panic, Matilda rushes to grab a defibrillator so she and Jill can try to revive him. However, when they activate the device, it delivers a shock that is too intense, affecting both of them. As morning breaks, Jill remains wide-eyed, holding on to Noah, who is still unconscious. Matilda awakens to find Noah unresponsive, but she is taken aback when he suddenly stirs and claims he was dreaming. Before they can formulate a plan, Jill fights to stay awake, and as the children cling to their mother, a U.S. Coast Guard officer arrives, gun in hand. Jill bravely defends her children, pleading with him not to harm them, which causes him to lower his weapon. Later, as they prepare to leave the hub, Matilda notices the sheriff's badge that Jill had been clutching. Her gaze shifts to the defibrillator, and she rushes to find Noah. She explains that it appears the solution to their sleep deprivation might be a brief cardiac arrest. Matilda reveals that Noah was technically dead the night before, but the defibrillator revived him. She also shares her own experience of being dead after drowning in the lake until the sheriff brought her back. Inspired by this, the kids decide to test their theory on Jill to see if it will work for her as well. They take her to the lake, where she is submerged to drown. Moments later, she is pulled out, and after repeatedly striking her chest to revive her, Matilda and Noah are relieved to hear her breathing once more.